Lynn Bianchi is a fine art photographer and multimedia artist who has shown her work in over 30 solo exhibitions and in museums worldwide. I met Lynn years ago. I responded to an ad she posted searching for a model for her newest project. I started by posing for both Lynn and her husband Robert Bianchi, who is also a photographer in his own right. Eventually, however, our collaboration expanded and I ended up becoming Lynn's assistant, helping her bring her visions to life as an editor and an artistic advisor. We became great friends and worked on many of Lynn's projects together, as well as made some beautiful New York memories. I am so happy I finally got to interview this artist whose work I admire so much. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Irina.
Thank you so much for doing this.
I'm so glad to do this with you. It's a privilege.
Thank you. We've known each other for so many years, and
Right.
I heard over the years so many interesting stories for you, and like at some point I was writing them down and I was, we did an interview that was a written interview, and then now I'm like, oh my god, we have to tell these stories to the world. So my first question was, how would you define what you do yourself?
How do I define what I do? I do what I feel from the inside. Things come to me that I feel that I have to express in one way or another. And the expression is always a surprise. I see it visually because I see myself as a photographer first. Often though, I want to add video to the moment.
Right.
And perhaps animation. So I'm in a different period of my life that started in 2010 with visiting my mother and going to the pools and seeing everybody move underneath the water on pools, and that's when it started.
Yeah. And so we will go back to that, but first let's go way back and talk about how you got started as a photographer, because what I find fascinating about you is that you started pretty late in life, you can say, right?
Yeah.
In comparison to others.
Well, I never thought about myself as an artist. In fact, I was an aimless, nervous person. I didn't know what to do with my life or what I was going to do with my life. I liked health food, cooking, vitamins, but I didn't know. And I worked for the city in order to have a living. But then I met Robert, and Robert had just begun photography. And we lived in an abandoned building, sort of a loft-like building. We lived together. And at that time, he was studying with Lou Bernstein, and they would have weekly sessions. Lou Bernstein encouraged Robert to take me on all their shoots, and I was dressed in little high heels with flappy shorts, and I went on beaches with them and in the woods with them and to the aquarium dressed like that. When I was younger, I dressed like that. And so I was included in everything. And so for 7 years, actually it took me 7 years, what happened is I saw a magazine. And in the magazine were these pictures of Lila Raymond. I loved the way she saw light. And all of a sudden, I got a camera, put film in it, and started my career.
Yeah. And how old were you?
I was 38.
Yeah.
And what happened was Robert was starting to learn how to print. And he was often be asked by Lou Bernstein if he wanted to watch him print. So anyway, we had a darkroom set up. Robert thought I was going to be assistant, but that lasted a half an hour.
Of
and
course.
when I started to learn how to print, I already knew that I was like light and white. And Robert liked dark, coming out of darkness, but I like light. So I knew what I wanted to do. I had no idea that I would be able to work with an enlarger, a manual camera, the technical.
Yeah.
Actually do anything technically, because the technical and I never agreed with each other. But I took pictures and I used to sneak my film consoles into his developing his film. So I would sneak my things into his thing. And he would develop my film, and this was going on for like almost 10 years, even when I became really good at photographing and printing.
Yeah.
And one of the first pictures I took became famous. The Flatiron Building in snow.
That's right. I have that I have that one framed. It's beautiful.
And I didn't think about the fact that greats photographed this building.
Right.
I just knew I loved their Steichen and Stieglitz. That's it.
And yours was in the blizzard.
Yes, and it was in a blizzard. And I loved blizzards because it was white on white. It was a blizzard.
And so, and at the time, though, did you guys still live in that abandoned building?
Yes.
Or?
Yes, we
So
lived
can
in
you tell me a little bit about that story, because that was really wild and so New York.
So when I met Robert, he lived in a building that he paid $80 a month for this sort of loft to rent. And also there were movie people there, Barbara Koppel, Kevin Keating, lots of people that lived in different floors. And people paid very little rent. So when I first met him, it was $80 a month.
Mm-hmm.
But when I moved in, the heating system was connected to the building next to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they tore down that building.
Uh-huh.
So there was no heat.
Oh my God.
So they left the building we were in sort of abandoned.
Uh-huh.
So then we didn't pay any rent. We paid no rent, no light, no gas, nothing.
How did you survive?
So we survived with the oven open.
Oh my God. And then like moving your bed when the rain fell on top of it.
So we lived with the oven, and I got very, very sick with the flu. I didn't get out of bed. I read that spoke Zarathustra. And with that, I went to bed and never came back out.
Mm-hmm.
And after I got very sick like that, Robert said, we're going to have a gas-based heater. I'm going to get that. And I said, what do we need that for? We have the oven. I said, can you believe it? And we didn't have air conditioning, so we used to go to the movies to get air conditioned. Then we got an air, and then we never had time. We didn't have a watch or clock or anything. We look out the window at the Con Ed building clock, and it usually worked, and that's how we knew what time was. And that's how we lived for years.
Oh my God.
Never thinking anything of it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So so then you eventually started taking nudes, right?
That's a whole other story.
Mm-hmm.
The first, I started to take, I was doing still lives and things that I loved in the world at first. And then I also saw Olivia Parker's images that use selenium. And I got, from those images, I was very interested with the still lives, doing split toning with selenium, with Patriga wrapper paper that no longer exists. And from there, after the loft, we lived in this loft for paying nothing for 8 years. We finally, I said, I can't do this anymore. The bank took the building, and with my mother's help and money we saved, we bought our loft on Lisbonard Street.
Yeah.
It was only $200 a month. But $200 a month seemed an awful lot to us because we were paying nothing.
Yeah.
So we decided to clean the building.
Uh-huh.
But we got fired kind of quick because we were terrible.
I can imagine the two of you cleaning.
We were terrible cleaners. And after a while, they just said fired. Yeah. But we built ourselves a big dark room in there. And then a half wall bedroom. It was very basic, and a kitchen. And we would live on cinder blocks with a wood a wood door for a table.
Yeah.
We thought that was great, and we had high ceilings. And when my mother came once, she looked at this and she said, I'm going to buy you a table. And I said to her, what do we need a table for?
Yeah, why would anybody need a table?
I said, well, probably that's just fine. Look at the light. We had light, north and south light.
Yeah.
And it was fabulous with big banks and windows and high ceilings. It had a dark room and a utility room with a big sink. We don't need a table. When my mother said, I'm going to buy you a table and chairs, you pick out what you want. So I bought this wood table and bistro chairs. And with that, we said, that wasn't bad. So at that time, it was the early 80s, maybe 80, 81 or something. And Robert loved the view camera. So he would go to the abandoned West Side Highway, which they tore down. And across from the West Side Highway were these big empty, I don't know what, lockers or warehouses.
Warehouses.
And he wanted to photograph in there. And there he met a Swiss photographer, Jean-Paul, who was also in there doing the same thing. And Jean-Paul was living with the person that I met, Nisha. Like, we became friends pretty quickly, and we started to shoot together. He was nude; there was nothing to that. But because I had honed my technique of the selenium. After I took the pictures of him, as I was continuing this series, I would hand tone his body with selenium. It's a very poisonous chemical. But at that time I was using the trigger rapid paper. And with Q-tips and brushes, I would carefully tone it and then dip it in selenium and do all kinds of things.
Wow.
And that I wanted to kind of create a sculptural form off the paper.
So I remember there was another story about the nudes.
With the bald-headed girl with Robert?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the way the nude started was this. Robert wanted to take portraits of people, and he's an extrovert. So he goes up to everybody that he thinks he might like and asks them whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Take a picture with me,
Yeah.
take a portrait. But first he wasn't doing nudes, he was doing portraits. So he met this Icelandic girl on the train that had a shaved head. And I guess her face looked great to him. And so then he said, would you take a picture with me? And you'd be surprised how many people at that time that, would say yes.
Yeah.
So she said yes. But when she came to the loft, apparently, she took off all of her clothes.
Okay.
When I came home, there was this, I was young, it was, when I came back, there he was with this nude girl photographing her, and we were just beginning photography, so it wasn't like a normal thing. This is before Nigel. So he was photographing her in the nude, so I called up my mother and I said, Mother, I don't know what to do. Robert's photographing this new woman in the house. And my mother was really nutty. She said, Lynn, Lysol the toilet.
What?
Lysol the toilet. Can you believe this? Lysol the toilet. So then I called up.
Solid advice.
So I called up Robert's mother and I said, Mary, he's photographing this new woman right in the loft. I must have been very naive, whatever. And she said, is that so bad, Lynn?
That's so bad.
So with that, Robert wanted me to be happy. So there was another woman that I photographed, and then there was Nigel, and then nudity meant nothing to us. It was just not nudity, it was the idea and the concept. It had really nothing to do, for me, with sexuality. And with Nigel, it was line, form, and shape.
So how did the heavy and white started? You started saying about the white photographer.
That was really interesting, because I went to the Whitney Biennial, and I know people might object to this, but they actually had plain tables, the brown ones with the metal legs, boring as hell, filled with garbage from room to room, and I just couldn't believe it. And literally garbage. I guess somebody was making a statement. They liked the statement, so it was like garbage, like dishes that are dirty, bags, everything. And it went from room to room, went all over with. And I was just saying, garbage?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I happened to go to the Modern, and all the Impressionists were there, with their table settings and with the beautiful tables and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, gee, I could do something better than this. Not better than the Impressionists or the garbage, but it gave me an inspiration.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, so what do I want to do? I said, well, I really like white. I said, what do I want to talk about? I said, I want to talk about body image. And what do I want to talk about? Heaviness, thinness, and and I want to express it through table settings. So the first picture was table setting with my cat.
Well, I remember coming into your studio for the first time to work with you, and then eventually with Robert, and there was really just that special atmosphere of creativity, and also how the way you say you and Robert were so used already by now to work with nudes that it was really nothing. Everybody was so comfortable.
Actually,
sometimes we
used to
were
it.
groups, sometimes it
Yeah.
was two people, sometimes it was one person, but it was just so relaxed, and you felt like you were a part of something special.
I was so glad because it actually from the beginning, nudity really had nothing to do with concept. Concept was always much more important than whether a person was nude or not. With me, people had to be nude because they couldn't be identifiable. I used to put their hair in rubber
Yeah,
so that the individual would be less apparent
yeah,
than the body gesture
yes,
or what we were doing at the time.
yeah. When we met, it was your first, or somewhere in the very beginning of you transitioning into the digital, into color.
Oh, I know, you were so patient with me. It was just a nightmare for me. There I am, white on white, thinking concept. And all of a sudden I'm doing color, and color was blatant. And I was like in shock. What am I doing? Everything in color turned out to be really color. And you were so kind because I didn't know what I was doing and I really didn't like color. Now I do.
Yeah. So how did that evolve? Like, why did you start liking it, and how,
Well, they took away a lot of my darkroom tools. Like, first of all, they stopped producing the paper I loved, Ecto Lord G. I bought tons of it. And I was reluctant to give up my darkroom in the beginning. And I'm not a technical person, so I really didn't love the digital age in the beginning. I was forced into it. In the beginning, before you, I actually did silver gelatin shoots. I scanned them, and then we put them into the computer. And a person named John, and then I would print them on a very big printer, like 44 inches. I would print them on transparencies. Some I made smaller, and I gold leafed them. I either gold leafed them, or I designed a special tissue in a way to put them together so that if a globe hit them, they would glow like an electric bulb was there.
Yes.
That came before
those.
the color.
Oh, I see. So it's really a kind of evolution, and then once that started, then you also started playing with video, and that was when you were visiting your mom, right?
Yes. Well, I videoed with my eyes for a year. So for 1 year, because I don't really love the technical, I never thought about a video camera underwater, and then it was just too much for me. I had to buy one.
Yeah, yeah.
So
and you were holding your breath underwater.
I really was. I would say die.
Yeah.
I would have a snorkel, but it never worked. So I'd say just hold still or die. What's the difference? Take it.
Where do you get your ideas from? Like today we were talking with Robert, right? And he was talking about dreams, how people dream them up. Where does it really come from for you?
I can just tell you that I made this big image, Coney Island Allison, when she was working with me, my assistants. I love to photograph assistants. And anyway, I had this vision of an ocean in the stomach because I wanted to people be able to read, relax, and look up, hear the ocean, and see this image. So I said, would she do this with me? And so we did. And she wore my coat, Robert's hat, an old garter from my mother was on her arm. She wore pink pants. She pulled her shirt up, and we went to Coney Island. And we made a sand pillow. Then I photographed Coney Island ocean.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, with great time and effort, I put it together.
And I always feel like when I see your work, it comes so much from like the heart and like really a feeling, that's really there. And what do you think about modern art, like other things you see? I'm only asking because recently I was at I was at the Petit Palais in Paris, and it's all the classical works, portraits and nature mort, and then I walked through this modern gallery there, and I didn't want to stop in front of anything. I just kind of blew through it, and I was asking myself, why was it? And I felt like there was like the soul, the light was not really coming through. It was bizarre.
I can understand, but I I can understand photography better than painting, but it was painting that gave me the inspiration for my classical bent. So it's really strange. But there's so many things that don't vibrate to me. But then I like AI images too. I like
really?
whatever I like, modern or not modern.
That makes sense.
You know, to me it doesn't matter if it's modern or not. It's just if it appeals to me. And then it doesn't, but then maybe later it would or it never does. I just can't. I hate everybody saying what the category is.
Right.
Because that just pigeonholes what is art, what isn't art.
Yeah.
And why is it always art and the beholders of some people and not the beholders of other people?
That's true. Why do you do art?
Oh, because
And you're still doing it. You're doing so much. It's
because it's me. It's who I am. It's what I'm meant to do. I don't really even care about if it's selling it, not selling it, showing it, not showing it. The thing is, I have to make things, and then I have to make it right.
I know you're very meticulous.
Yes,
and you
yes, I'm
remember everything.
meticulous, and it has to be right, and it has to please me, because after all, I'm making everything for my soul, and I'm making it to please me. You know, I'm very happy if it makes other people happy, but when I'm compelled to do it, I'm only thinking about this thing I'm expressing.
And it's interesting because in your process, I know that you're so in the moment and you shoot things, and then after that you say, oh, actually, you know what, that's what I want to do. And then there has to be this whole process to figure out how to make it happen.
Right, because I approach things usually from a photograph point of view. I seem to have to do both.
So how did you come to this idea of layering photography and video together?
Because I love the moment. And the moment I love it extended some to include the moment. And just a photograph is great because you can get the moment. And the moment to me is very important. I love it. It's that moment. But what's going on in that moment besides that moment is also very interesting to me.
Yeah.
So I wanted to extend it. And with video or animation or whatever, I could extend the moment. And then I could even add fantasy to go along with the whole thing.
And when it comes to fantasy, I feel like something kind of spiritual and esoteric enters the stage here, because I remember when you did the Irina sunrise and the sunrise was rising in my chest. And I remember, we did the thing and it was your idea and I was like, okay. And then I happened to be on the beach during sunrise for some movie shoot or something. And I looked at it and I felt it in my chest. And that's when I realized, I was like, oh my God, Lynn was right. The sun is rising in my chest. How did she know that?
Yeah, because I felt it in my chest. You know, I felt the emotion of that sunrise in my chest. And now I'm going to maybe do a shoot with my body outline coming down and out of these leaves with leaves moving.
So that's actually something interesting. How did you come to now, because you did your first work recently where you are present in it. That's the first time that you were, how did you?
The work with Many Moons in the Vacancy. Well, I had such a life-altering experience dying and being in an ICU for a year.
Right.
So anyway, I was there for a month. So I would occasionally take pictures of things. And also when they sent me to rehab, I only lasted a day and a half in one of those terrible rehabs here in Brooklyn. There was this filter system where there was this big tube and with a silver cap on it, so they would get the air in from the. It was really archaic and in a really ugly room, and this thing would move, breathe in and out, or something. And I would look at it, and it was like the man in my room, but not a frightening man. But I looked at the tube as a man.
Oh.
So I took pictures of him, and then I kept thinking, I want to do a video of this. And I was thinking about it for a year. Sometimes it takes me a year or more.
To process
or
and
2
to
years.
decide.
But I knew I wanted to do it, and I had taken some pictures. And then when my husband was in emergency rooms, I took some other pictures. And then my friend Janice Millman happened to take a couple pictures of me videoed me, a couple of pictures of me when she first saw me in the ICU. And I used one of them in my video. It's very obscure, but I used it with me lying in the bed. So all these things came together. And of course I work with Yana Barakova on this, who is wonderful. And I also work with you in my videos, who's spectacular. So I have great help.
And that must have been hard for you too at first, right? Because you were so independent when you did photography.
Well,
and then you
I was totally
meeting.
independent for all those years. I did silver gelatin. It was fun, those shoots, and then also I'm friends with the people today.
Yeah,
and they're friends together.
You I know it's like a community you created. Like Bryce worked for you, and I worked for you, and then my son worked for Bryce because I know them now.
Yeah,
and I met so many great people through you. Like I feel like both you and Robert created that little artist community around yourselves in New York.
And also, not only were you my model, but you were my mainstay working with videos.
Yeah, I remember at first, I mean, you probably know this, it was hard to model for you because you have your idea and you are so good at really knowing exactly what it is you want, and it's such a fine line between really being present, and I think that's what I learned working with you, is really slow down, be present, don't act,
right,
just be in the moment. And it's a real fight sometimes, I guess, for you as an artist to get that out of the person, because everybody wants to perform in front of the camera,
especially in women with umbrellas. But with that shoot, I just wanted everybody to stand still with the sameness and difference of their rear ends and hold an umbrella. You can't imagine. It took hours to just get them to stand still.
That is so crazy.
People didn't want to just stand still because they wanted to perform for me so I would have a good picture.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get them to understand not to move.
Yeah.
But I did get it.
Yes, I know. It's
but
a beautiful
picture. But it was very
picture.
difficult.
But it's funny because it looks so simple.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful idea. It's very simple. You would never believe that it took hours to make it happen.
And because you wanted to give me all you could and you could act.
Yeah.
But if it isn't that you're feeling the moment and you're acting the moment, then the acting of the moment, unless it's a parody, doesn't work.
Yeah.
A parody can work.
Right.
But if you're acting what you think is the moment, then it's all about you acting rather than
and
you
that
feeling.
is so true for acting in general. You know, it's very
because
true.
it ruined the moment of you feeling what you're feeling.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And I wanted, and in fact, the picture of my mother and her friend in the bedroom.
Yes, I love that picture.
Couldn't get them to stop to just stop posing. Finally, my mother really laughed, and her friend laughed. And my mother said to me when she saw that picture, "Lynn, I have such a nice nose. That's the only picture I've seen of me where my nose looks terrible."
Oh no! So, what are your plans now for the future?
Oh, you can't imagine what I'm doing now. It's wonderful and portable because I'm making individual video pieces that have to have individual framing. I'm making a big theater piece. Everything goes right and wrong with everything I'm doing, and it takes a lot of work because I have to go to a framer. Now I might have to go to a 3D person for printing.
Wow.
I said when I was 80, I was going to do this big exhibition. So it's going to be all kinds of new things and retro.
But more 81 now.
So
I know because we're 40 years apart, and
now
I'm
going to be turning 81, and everything is like half done. But it isn't because I'm not working. Each thing has so many parts. But to tell you the truth, if it takes me to 85, I've got to get it right.
Would you say that New York City changed a lot over the time that you've been here?
Well, yes. I think it was the bombing of the World Trade Center. One that got better, but then COVID came in, and then New York really did change. I mean, it's coming back. I no longer at 80 or 81 want that kind of intensity, but at the time I loved it until the very end. I had to accept New York for always changing. Some for the good, some for the bad.
Yeah.
But it was always changing. But after COVID, they were building the worst buildings with big windows, of fakey facades. But then last year, I think of the years, I was walking from the Whitney downtown through the West Village, and it was exactly the same.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good feeling.
Yeah, but I still love New York, but I'm glad I'm living in Brooklyn.
Well, you know, it's still New York, and I mean, kudos to you that you stayed, because honestly, when I left, I felt like the city was this huge animal that just kind of did this, and whoever didn't hold on hard enough just had to roll off, and I was one of those people. That's how it felt. I was like, it is what it is.
Either that gets to you or the black garbage bags. You know, but else you feel like that, or you feel, people feel they can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
But I feel New York did change after COVID. But
yeah.
What do you feel? It's coming back though.
I did feel like you say, now being in the streets, I feel that same vibe coming back, which makes me very happy because it is a very special place.
It is because it does accept people from it. It has a different kind of acceptance of difference.
Yes.
That I haven't explored the whole world, but difference is accepted in other places as it is here.
Yeah, and it's beautiful.
Or even if it's just on the surface, it's sort of a silent agreement.
What would be your advice to young artists?
Stick with your heart and do whatever your heart tells you to do.
Great. I love it. Lynn, thank you so much.
Why, thank you.
This has been great. I hope we do this again, maybe with Robert next time.
Oh, yeah.
And thank you.